Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us in the next installment of our webinar Workforce Job Fair series. As you all know, last year we held the first ever CD6 in-person job fair where we had over 1,000 job seekers connect with over 60 employers. And we wanted to do that again this year, but we can't because of the pandemic. So we came up with the idea of doing these virtual seminars to help people with critical skills that they need to navigate the challenging job environment and to either help move their career to the next level or to even shift careers. So I'm here in Washington tonight. We're actually working really hard right now to get another stimulus bill to get an extension of unemployment insurance benefits. I know that so many families are struggling to pay their rent, their mortgage, their bills, to buy food with the lapse of the unemployment insurance program. So we're fighting really hard to get an extension of that program and get the relief that Colorado needs so desperately. In addition to that, we want funding for more coronavirus testing, more contact tracing, resources for our cities and for our school districts to really meet the urgency of this crisis. I hear from all of you all the time about how challenging it is throughout the community, and I'm working really hard to meet that need. So tonight's seminar is going to be great. We're joined again by Beth Hobbs with Arapahoe Douglas Works, who joined us for an earlier seminar. And tonight, Ms. Hobbs is going to be talking to us about career reinvention, a really important topic as so many industries and jobs now are going out of business, and we see massive changes in the economy. You know, what is the process of thinking about it? How do you look at changing careers and professions? How do you do that assessment? How do you reinvent your career at whatever stage you are in life? So Beth Hobbs with Arapahoe Douglas Works is going to help work through that process with you. We hope you find these seminars useful. Please let us know. Contact my office either in Aurora or in Washington if you're having problems or challenges navigating federal agencies or benefits, and we are standing by to help you. It's one of the most important parts of my job. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Beth Hobbs to take it over and present tonight's training. Beth, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Representative Crow. I'm very happy to be here tonight and to talk about a topic that is really one of the most current needs that I hear. I am a career advisor, a workforce specialist with Arapahoe Douglas Works, and so I talk with job seekers every day, and many of them are now contemplating looking for a different career, really moving away from what they've been doing in the past. As we progress tonight, I'm going to ask you to put all of your questions in the chat box, and we will make sure that all of those questions get answered at the end of the presentation, but I won't stop in the middle to answer them. So please put them in the chat box and just know that they will all get answered before the end of the presentation. So with that, I am going to share my screen with you so you can see the slides that I have. So it'll just take a moment here. Okay, so as we get started here, let me just say that career reinvention is an expedition. It's not a day trip. So I want you to think in terms of that. This is really a journey. And so the very first thing, we want to talk about the objectives for tonight. So they are, first of all, to understand a little bit about the process of career change. What are the things that we need to think about when we're contemplating that? Secondly, to explore some new tools for career change. And lastly, to apply the steps that we're going to talk about tonight to change careers successfully. So 3 main challenges that often are in front of us. The first is to recognize that sometimes we are our own biggest obstacle. Make sure that this new career or this change is something that really for you is a burning desire and not, shall we say, a passing fancy. We oftentimes make excuses that stop us from moving forward, and we know that what's past is past, and so there are changes coming. We've seen enormous changes in our lives in the last few months. There will be many more as we progress forward, even as the country reopens. I want you to think, I want you to know that simply thinking about options doesn't necessarily work. You need to put real energy into career change. It takes a lot of work. Be mindful of what others tell you, and also a little bit about what is your body telling you as you kind of think about different kinds of things. It should come as a relief then that the main ingredient of successful reinvention is really not IQ, it's not having nerves of steel or membership in some kind of exclusive club, but rather it's about attitude, it's about commitment, and it's about the willingness to follow some fairly simple principles. For those of you contemplating changing careers, I would encourage you to think about assessments. Our workforce centers offer a number of assessments. Some of them are to help you determine your skill level. Some of them are to really kind of dig into your interests and what direction might you consider going. Others really deal with skills and where do your skills lie and how do we match those up with different careers or occupations. So first of all, you want to start with a vision. So we know that Steve Jobs told us that if you're working on something that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision kind of pulls you along. And that's what we're hoping for in career and reinvention, is to really have in our minds some kind of vision that is going to pull us along. So the first thing that we need to do is to think about the myths and really do some reality checks on how we're looking at this vision. So start with the vision for your change, because careers or jobs are really just delivery devices for the kind of life you want to lead. And so you have to think about that first. What is the life that I'm looking to lead? For some people, it means I want a job that I can go to Monday through Friday. I want to go in, do my job, come home, and I don't want to think about it. Others are looking to really build careers, to maybe looking to gain greater income. So there's all kinds of ways that you can look at jobs and at work. And we want to recognize that those careers or jobs really are delivery devices for the kind of life that I want to have. So think about some of the myths that you may be telling yourself. Some of them are on the screen before you. Things like, without a degree, I don't stand a chance. I work with a lot of older workers who are seeking work, and some of them oftentimes say to me, I think I'm too old. No one will hire me. That's a myth. We're doing lots of work here in Colorado to ensure that that doesn't happen, but it's even a myth today. There is work for older job seekers as well. Sometimes we hear from people, you have to know somebody to get in. Well, there may be some truth to that, but then the key is, how do we get to know somebody so that we do get in? How do we set ourselves up to be the most successful? When we tell ourselves negative myths like this, they can often become self-fulfilling prophecies, and we don't want that. Rather, we want to really visualize and use positive thinking to help us stay on course. But we also don't want to set ourselves up for positive myths that may provide unrealistic expectations. And sometimes that happens when we start talking about job change. So think about, what are the problems that you think would be solved if you move to a different career? What things will you finally get that you've been waiting for? What are the barriers that you think might stop you from getting there? What cool things am I looking forward to in my new career? What won't I have to deal with once I make the switch? And as you think about all of these questions, there's kind of a positive and a negative to them. Sometimes we can assume that by moving into a different career, we will have no issues. Everything will be wonderful. We'll be able to buy whatever it is we want to buy, that kind of thing. And that's an unrealistic myth as well. Sometimes we need to just get in touch with what are the barriers that we think are going to stop us, not because we want those barriers to stop us, but because we want to give some thought to how am I going to get around those or over those or under those. So just kind of thinking about some of those questions as you think more about changing careers is helpful to uncover maybe some myths that you've been dealing with. So step one in all of this is that career change is a journey. And if we think about it from a map perspective, it looks more like a treasure map than it does like what you would see on your GPS. We oftentimes, as we think about changing careers, encounter detours, congestions, roadblocks, and sometimes we end up at a place that we didn't even anticipate, and yet it's a great place for us. Think about, where are your strengths? This is a time to really sit down and identify what your strengths are. And I deal with a lot of job seekers, and I always say to them, you have all kinds of strengths. It's about taking the time to sit down and to identify them, so that as you start to look for other positions, you can find things that really are positions that you will thrive in. It's also important sometimes that we also identify our values, because different workplaces can work well with our values or not so well with our values. So it's important that we understand what those are for ourselves. Also, we sometimes have financial or environmental needs that we want to talk about. Do we want to think about, what am I looking for? Anytime you're going to make a career change, you need to know what your bottom line is financially too. It's much easier to move into related occupations or ones that line up with your transferable skills, which says, first of all, I need to know what my skills are. I need to be able to identify those because positions that work off of those skills are going to be the easiest for me to transition into. We know that change is hard, and it often pushes us to a place of discomfort. When you are really looking to reinvent yourself, you often have to choose to put yourself in that place of discomfort, to think about, what am I willing to sacrifice, maybe long-term, maybe it's just short-term, to achieve the goal that I'm looking at. And really give yourself permission to pursue what you want. So as we think about step one, just a little review, and I'm going to do this at the end of every step. The takeaway is that careers and jobs are delivery devices. So we really want to define for ourselves, what is the life that we hope to lead, and then what are the careers or jobs that are going to get us there. Watch out for forgetting to give yourself permission to pursue a different and a bigger life. Sometimes we can put a lot of roadblocks in our own way. And as you think about, how am I going to move forward, start to make a list of 3 or 4 ideas that could deliver that lifestyle that you're looking at. And I'd say along with that, start putting together that list of skills that you have. And lastly, don't forget to spend a little time thinking about, what are the things I love most about my life right now? And how do I make sure that those things follow me into my next position or into my next career? I'm going to talk just for a moment about kind of some of the physical part of this. Your body is often a good guide to where you should be going. There's a real, sometimes balancing act between instinct and intellect. Our instinct is wise, and we don't want to let go of that. We can oftentimes get signals through our body that tend to lead us in one direction or another. And our intellect, which is important as we start to get into doing research, can also sometimes pop up some of those barriers for us, or some of those myths for us. So you have to really be thinking, what am I feeling from an instinct perspective, and then what do I know intellectually? Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink, and he said, respect the fact that it's possible to know without knowing why we know, and accept that sometimes we're better off that way. And so sometimes we just have that feeling that the next place I need to belong, or I want to pursue, is in this direction. And sometimes we can't even articulate that. All good decision making certainly requires an ever-shifting balance of intellectual and instinctual input. Some decisions are better left to the first clear signal we have in our body. that sends a message to us if we're paying close attention. So as we think about listening to our body, I just want to make it clear kind of what I'm talking about here. When you think about a new occupation or a new career or a new job path, are you feeling relaxed about that? You know, is there a sense of relaxation in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your stomach, just generally within your body? Is your adrenaline flowing when you think about that? Are you anxious to get started to move down that path? Does the thought of it make you smile? Does your chest feel more open? Does your body tend to quiet down? So it's kind of like if you think of something like a bowl of Brussels sprouts, does your mouth water over the idea, or are you filled with dread? So that's kind of when we talk about listening to our body, what are those signals that we're taking in regard to that? So again, the takeaway is that sometimes our body is more reliable than our intellect of what we truly want or don't want. And I think if you spend some time reflecting on that, you'll see that. Watch out for your intellect shooting down your body's message. Sometimes we can intellectually put a lot of barriers in front of where we think we want to go. And career reinvention is a lot about pushing through that. So moving forward, pick an area of your life and kind of practice tuning into your body's signals when you make decisions. And lastly, ponder, what is your body telling you that you may be afraid to hear? And it may be that message that now is the time to go for this, or it may be the message that this isn't what you need to be pursuing. We know that progress really begins when we stop making excuses. And so as you think about potential excuses that might block your reinvention, here are some that I put on the screen. Think about the messages that you tell yourself. Remember that true career change needs to be more of a burning desire than a passing fancy. It's a lot more work than going back into what I've always done. But ask yourself, why is it out of your hands? What is it? So start to take some of these excuses apart. What is it that makes me think that this might be out of my hands? What you know can be learned. What you don't know can be learned. And in all likelihood, if you are moving into a new career, you will have to discover what capabilities or skills are necessary for this new career. I encourage you to research this career. I encourage you to read job postings for this new position that you're thinking about moving into, and take a look at what are they listing as qualifications for that. Connect with other people who are perhaps working in that arena already. We talk about doing informational interviews. Informational interviews are nothing more than connecting with people in an organization who have a position that is similar to either the position that you want to have, or sometimes informational interviews are about connecting with people who work for an organization that you wish to work for. Again, we know that it's going to take time, and so you know it's a journey. It's not a day trip. I'm going to discuss mentors with you a little bit later, but really for all of these excuses, and there may be other ones that really have been kind of standing in the way of your doing a career in reinvention, begin to spend a little bit of time and energy thinking about, is what I'm telling myself really true in terms of this? And excuses oftentimes will translate to fear. So there's really two kinds of fears that we see. Fear can be a healthy sign that you are venturing beyond your comfort zone, which you must do repeatedly if you want to move closer to that goal. But know that there are two types of fears. So we first talk about functional fear. So this is where we ask yourself, am I in danger? In other words, a functional fear would be, if I just step off the curb on a busy street, I might get hit by a car if I'm not looking both ways and being very careful about where I'm crossing that street. That's a functional fear. There is real danger there, potentially real danger. But false fears are when we kind of project a negative impact into the future. You know, they're the kinds of things where you say to yourself, well, what if this were to happen? Or what if that were to happen? And so you need to pull those apart and really take a look at, first of all, is there a way around that fear? Or am I just, again, putting up some roadblocks for myself? And one of the best ways to do this is really to find other people that you can lean on, that you can have conversation with. We'll talk a little bit more about mentors shortly, but distract yourself from some of that, get inside some of those fears, find out what's really going on here. And lastly, spend some time talking back to that fear. You know, if I'm afraid of moving forward because, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, okay, let's talk about that. What if it doesn't work? But what if it does work? You know, what if you can attain that goal? And rather than thinking about what if it doesn't work, what am I going to do to make sure that it does play out the way that I would want it to? So as I said, letting go of excuses is important, kind of giving up complaining. Don't let those excuses become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Think instead about what are the reasons for why you're stuck or unhappy or unable to change or make progress. And then figure out what are the steps I'm going to do to get around that. So it takes making a commitment. Maybe it's a commitment to doing the research that you need to do. Maybe it's a commitment to talking with others who are in that field or to finding out more about that. Maybe it's a commitment to additional training that you might want to look at. There are programs that assist people in getting additional training. The state of Colorado has dollars that come in from the federal government and a program called Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which you can connect with a counselor at one of our workforce centers. But essentially there are dollars available for people who want to upskill or for people who want to change careers and feel like they need some kind of certification to get started. So there's lots of things to research out there and to think about to make that commitment and move forward. And once you've made that commitment, kind of take a look at your actions in light of what you want to do. And just know that the goal is to keep moving forward every day toward that goal of changing careers. I mentioned assessments, and that may be one of the steps that you take as well. So just remember that oftentimes when we're making excuses, that's motivated by a fear. And so we want to get inside of that and really figure out what's the validity of that and how do I get around that. What stops us really is believing our excuses so deeply that we aren't able to move into anything new. So as you move forward, think about 3 options to get around what's the biggest excuse I'm telling myself in my head, and then what would life look like if I gave up all of those excuses? How do I think my new career would unfold? So what you seek is often on the road less traveled. And so taking a different, unexpected path is really oftentimes about exploring multiple alternatives. And so not knowing the outcome of your reinvention can be difficult. However, the process of reinvention forces you to get more comfortable around ambiguity. And so when we talk about ambiguity, that's really that place that many people are in right now. What we know about change is that we leave a place of generally security in an organization or in a career path. We know exactly how to do our work. We know when to show up. We know who we report to, what's important to the organization, all of that. And then suddenly we find ourselves in this place of ambiguity in which we're not sure exactly what our next career will look like. We're not sure when it will come about. And I think right now there are a lot of unknowns around job search as a whole. Obviously, the goal is to get to the other side, to where we do have a position and we begin to learn things about that new organization, about the new group of people that we are going to work with, about the work that we're going to be doing. And if you think about it in terms of, I often think about it in terms of the pilgrims, where they left a life behind that they knew and they understood, and they got in a boat. And for that time while they were in the ocean, that was their time of ambiguity. Eventually they hit land, and eventually they were able to create a whole new life there. But that time while they were out at sea, there were lots of unknowns. There were certainly things they thought might happen, some of which probably did, some of which probably didn't. But one of the things we know is that we need to get a little bit more comfortable about ambiguity. Reinvention is not about the status quo. It's about trying something new. And so anyone who's considering career in reinvention understands that they're not only going to be trying something new, but there may be a lot of learning involved getting to the something new. So I'm going to share with you an idea that I think is really helpful. It's called mind mapping. Mind mapping is really a type of graphic organizer that uses a diagram to visually organize ideas and concepts. The central idea or concept is placed in the center of the diagram, and then related ideas are added to it in kind of a radial fashion. So there's usually two different groups of individuals that I'm working with. One group knows what they want their next career to be. It is different from where they were before, but they have a pretty good idea of where they want to go. And so if you put the title of that on a graph like this, and you can actually draw one of these yourself, it's, you know, you put a circle in the center of a piece of paper and you put down, where is it I want to go? What's the name of the new position I want to be? And then we start to draw these lines out from there, thinking about, what do I need to know? What do I need to do to get there? So let's just say that I'm thinking that I want to be an administrative assistant. I haven't done that before. Maybe I've been in the hospitality industry. So one of those branches may be to identify, what are the skills I have that I think would transfer? And let me start to just write those down. Another branch may be, what kind of training or basic skills do I need in order to pursue this new career? And maybe in the case of administrative assistant, I begin to think about Microsoft Office skills. Are my skills up to date? And if not, where can I get the training that I need to make sure that they are up to the level that they need to be in order to secure the kind of position I'm looking for? Maybe another branch is about, what kinds of organizations am I looking to be employed by? And, you know, there may be offshoots of all of that. Maybe I want to think about distance. I don't want to be very far from home. Or maybe I want to be on a mass transit line of some kind. Or maybe I want to work in a particular industry. Maybe I want to do that work within healthcare. Maybe I want to do it within corporate America or someplace else. So you begin to see that by creating all of these branches off of that, I can get a visual of the things that I need to do and what's it going to take to get there. And it's really helpful because as you connect with other people and have conversation, they can help you add to this graphic to make sure that you're really thinking about the entire picture as you move forward. So if you do informational interviews, somebody may share with you the easiest places to enter into that profession. Okay, and you may want to create a branch for that. So that's one group of individuals that I tend to see are those who are fairly sure about where they're going. The other group of individuals that I work with oftentimes know that they don't want to go back to where they are, but they aren't sure where they want to go. Okay, so that center circle is difficult to fill in. So we kind of create the center circle, but we start with the branches and we think about, what are my transferable skills? I need to identify those. What assessments might I take that would help me identify some good career paths for me to check out? Maybe I want to start to have some informational interviews with people who might be able to help me. Maybe I start by talking to a career advisor. And then as ideas start to come to me, and maybe I'm thinking about, well, I could be an administrative assistant, or maybe I could work as a project manager, maybe I have some IT skills. Wherever my skills are, those too can be branches, and you can make branches off of those about what do I need to do to pursue that. So it may be that if one of my branches is administrative assistant, let's say I have some pretty good Microsoft Office skills, so it might not be hard to move into that. But if I'm really thinking that what I'd like to pursue might be something within IT, then I have to perhaps get a certification in order to enter into that occupation. And so then, another branch becomes, where am I going to get that? What kind of certification do I need? So again, it becomes that graphic of what are the things I need to be considering. And so in this case, where I'm not sure, as I think through my transferable skills and maybe take some assessments and I start to narrow that down, the graph is helpful. And in fact, it may end up being a couple of graphs once I identify some paths that I might want to go down. So if you haven't tried this, I really suggest it's a very creative way of doing it, and it tends to generate a lot of ideas for people. And also it's a great way to sit down with other people who might help you as well brainstorm career ideas. So as you're thinking about directions that you might want to go, besides identifying your transferable skills and your strengths, think about, in the work that you've done in the past, when have you been in the flow? In other words, when have you done tasks for which you really got so absorbed in, you forgot about the time and you just really got absorbed into them? We all have those. I know that in my work career, there are projects that I've worked on or tasks that I've done in which I just get so lost in them that hours can go by. Those are times when I'm really working in my strength. And so you want to take note of that, because those are the kinds of skills that can easily transfer to something else. Sometimes it's times when things feel easy for us. When talent can feel as natural as breathing. So there are things that I can do that just seem effortless, where for someone else they might seem difficult, and vice versa. There are things that they can do that seem effortless to them that for me would be very difficult and tough to stick with. Sometimes it's things that are so abundantly clear to you, you wonder why others don't see it. Things that seem obvious to you. Think about where your interests are, things that kind of spark an unending sense of curiosity. The more interested we are in a topic or in a career, in a pathway, the easier it is for us to move into that career. Think about what part of your current career do you enjoy the most? You don't have to leave everything behind when you decide to reinvent to a different career. And in fact, you'll be most successful in career changes that build on skills you already have. And I'll give you an example of that. I spent 12 years in a K-12 system. And when I, through a layoff, ended my time there, and I thought I really want to do something different. I'm not sure where I want to go with that. But as I thought about my skills and the things that I had done successfully, I realized that moving into adult education, which in many ways is very different than K-12, but on the other hand, there are transferable skills from one to another that made that transition a little bit easier. And lastly, think about, am I interested more in an entrepreneurial kind of situation? What should exist in the world that doesn't? You know, if any of you have sat down and watched Shark Tank, you know, sometimes it's amazing to me how simple some of those ideas are that people have, and yet something brought that idea to mind and gave them the push to produce that or to go after that. Where for others, even if I were to think of that idea, I might not take the initiative to bring it into existence. So select, as you're doing all of this, the idea is really to select that reinvention target. You know, what is it I'm going to focus on if I'm going to reinvent myself? Like I said earlier on, two groups of people. The group that is really very unsure of where they want to go, make it much more difficult for people to help them. Because I can help you along that path if I know kind of where you want to go generally. But if you have no idea, the options are just too endless. And so that's why we encourage people to identify strengths, to identify skills, to take a look at what their interests are, and to begin to see if they can't narrow that down. So as you're doing all of that, visioning and kind of research, that will hopefully guide you to a path that is worth pursuing. Now that path may be open to several different careers, but at least you've narrowed it down to a path that makes some sense for you going forward. Think about, what have I always wanted to do, but I never felt I could? For some people, that's their career invention. It might be something that they've always wanted to do since childhood and now feel like, gee, maybe now is the time. Some people think about it a different way. If I didn't have to earn money, what would I do? We know we all have to earn money, but for some, the passion to do a particular career takes them on a place to where they actually do end up earning money. Sometimes we hear that certain careers, I'll just pick out being an artist, doesn't, you know, you never make any money being an artist. But the reality is there are some very well-paid artists. And so if the passion is there and we do our homework, there are ways to make for the money to follow, I guess I would say. So in review, explore those roads less traveled, those become more creative as you think about career options. And really, the more you can get out and explore different careers, we know that there are careers that are available today that no one had ever heard about 5-10 years ago. One of the ones that has popped up in the last few months, we talk about people who are contact tracers. Perfect example. Most of us had never heard those two words before. And while those positions have probably existed in some extent prior to COVID, we also know that that's becoming more of a position. So really think broadly and think creatively, and again, get out and talk to people, do your research, because oftentimes there are career options out there that we haven't even thought about. Watch out for people that might be telling you, no, that's not a possibility, who might be wanting to make that box smaller for you rather than enlarging that box for you. So my recommendation for you would be to begin thinking about two of those less obvious career options that you maybe have been thinking about, or again, take some of those assessments so you begin to explore some of those options. One of the assessments that we have at the Career Center, which I think is just really marvelous, it's called U Science, and it's done, you can take it from the Career or from the Workforce Center for free, and it actually takes a look at people's skills on a variety of topics. And once they've identified skills for you, they have a list of occupations that match those skills. So they have a list of 10 to 15 occupations that are excellent matches to the skills that you have. And then they have another layer down of careers or jobs that are less a good match, but a little less of a match, let's say. But in doing that, you also learn a lot about your skills, and you also gain a lot of really helpful verbiage when you go to write resumes. Also, what are the other times when you've pursued a road less traveled and you've succeeded? Sometimes we don't take enough time in our career search to really reflect back on what have we done. And when you think back to the positions that you have had in the past, what have you really liked doing? What are those positions and what are those skills that you were using that really made work enjoyable for you? And sometimes we've even stepped out into careers or jobs that we never thought we'd have, let's put it that way, and we've succeeded at them, you know, because we've been willing to take a bit of a risk. So, good thing to ponder. So you've got tools in your toolbox. You're not starting from scratch in all of this, and I think oftentimes people think they are when they think about reinventing themselves. One of the biggest myths of reinvention is that your previous work has no bearing on what you're looking at going forward. So you have to get out of the habit of summing yourself up by what you've done and or who you were in the past, and really start shifting that frame to think about who you want to be in the future. We talk about this when we talk about writing resumes, in that we often start them with a professional summary. And oftentimes people are tempted to write that as kind of a look back over where I've been, rather than defining themselves professionally on where they want to go. So it takes a little bit of letting go of your old identity. I've seen people put together business cards of the new job that they want to have, and they start, you know, passing them out to people they meet, so that people begin to think of them in that arena. Sometimes people have gone to social events in that new industry or fairs or whatever. Meetup is a great place to begin to connect with people who are in that industry or in that position that you might be interested in. So, and make sure that you're telling people that you're pursuing a new field. People need to hear that, especially people who know you. Because along the way, the more people you have working on your behalf to help you get to your goals, the faster you're going to get there. And so if you have been in one type of position and you're really thinking about looking at a totally different career, let people know that. Because again, they may have a network of people that may be able to help you. So it's, you know, as I said, letting go of your old identity and making a list of skills which transfer to your new endeavor. So think about skills that you have in terms of technical skills you have, and that may be everything from I can drive a forklift to I can do Microsoft Office to perhaps I know how to do graphic design, whatever you consider your technical skills to be. Think about your communication skills, critical thinking skills, ability to multitask, teamwork skills, creativity, leadership, and this is just a few of what is an enormous list of skills. And if you get kind of hung up on, gee, I don't know what to label as my skills, I would encourage you to go out and Google the word job skills, and you will find a very long list, and you can start to read through those and think about, are those skills that I have? So don't get skills confused with jobs. Jobs are where we work, but the skills are what make us successful in those jobs. And oftentimes, in fact, more times than not, those skills are transferable. Talking with a number of people in the last few months who have been in the hospitality industry, we're talking about their skills and how they might translate those to a different job. Obviously, they have generally enormous skills in the area of customer service. And so where are positions that for which customer service skills are paramount to success? So really thinking in terms of skills and letting go of jobs that I've been in. And then to figure out, okay, if these are the skills, what might I do? Which ones are transferable to something different? And I think you'll be amazed at how many of them are. So review, your tools are really your skills and your talents. And that's what you're going to use to build your new career. So it's important that we can identify those. And again, that is not a short list, that is a long list. Watch out for the gap between the skills you have and the ones you'll need. A lot of times when we move into a new career, we find that there are skills that we don't have that we do need, whether that's just information that we need to know, or maybe it's something we actually need to do. For example, maybe I have great Microsoft Word skills, but for the positions that I'm looking at, I need Microsoft Excel skills. Okay, then that's a gap. Where am I going to find the training that I need in order to make that happen? So if this is a bit of a struggle, make a list of your previous job duties and successes, and then start to break them down and say to yourself, okay, so what was the skill that was needed in order to do this job? Okay. And again, as I have more conversation with people in the hospitality industry, we can begin to identify the skills that they have that we can take a look at other positions and other industries that they can move into. So ponder, what are the tools that I have? What are the skills? Am I willing to polish them up? Sometimes I have to polish them up. I may have used Microsoft Word in the past, but I'm not an expert user. Maybe I need to get back in and do a little training to polish that up. And then there may be new skills that I need to get in order to really be successful in where I want to go. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about a reinvention board. A reinvention board is a fancy word for talking about the people who are going to help you along the way. So first of all, think in terms of strategy. It's the framework you'll use to conduct your search, and it'll help you organize as you move forward. So we need to essentially come up with a strategy or a plan. It's not meant to be set in stone, because obviously the more we learn, the more we talk to people, the more research we do, it's got to be fluid because it's going to be changing. We know that it does require research. It does require operations and funding. And by that I mean, so when we think about research, it's kind of the gathering of information about new industries or new companies or maybe new positions, skills, that kind of thing. Operations are really, what are the tasks and the details that are required for me to do this search effectively and efficiently. And lastly, funding. And this is an important piece because sometimes when you change careers, there is additional training that's needed. And so you have to think about, how am I going to fund that? And like I say, there are some programs to sometimes pay for some of that. But also, what is it going to mean in the meantime when I think about funding? Do I have the funds to take care of myself and my obligations during this time of kind of ambiguity and exploration and that kind of thing? Or do I need to look at maybe taking what we call a survival job, a job that will help to get us through until we can get to where we really want to go? People are incredibly important in any job change, frankly, in moving from unemployed to employed, people are incredibly important. But when you're looking at changing careers, they become even more important. So just know that 70 to 80% of the people who become employed do so through networking. And so building that network of people is important. These are people who can sometimes help you analyze, sometimes give you information, sometimes kind of take a look at your plan and say, well, you know, here's an easier way. And there's certain types of people we're looking for. And I put some of the names of those, I'm going to explain those to you, but we talk about master connectors. So think about the people you know, the people in your network, and do you have someone who's kind of a networking expert? Sometimes it's that someone with great connections who can put you in touch with others who may be able to help you. And, you know, we all meet people along the way that can do that. I have a sister-in-law that has amazing contacts all over. And so, you know, look for those kinds of people to be part of the people who are helping you. We talk about clued-in colleagues. So this is somebody that you've worked with who knows your strengths and your weaknesses and can really have an honest conversation with you to discern whether or not an opportunity or a career path is a good match for you and your skills. Sometimes when we look at our own skills, the lens we're looking through is our own. And so oftentimes it's helpful to have somebody else who's worked alongside of you and who can say to you, you know what, I've seen you work in this other arena and be just amazing at it. And maybe that's not even something you've considered. We all need warm and fuzzy people. So that's the good friend who's going to catch you if you fall and can make you feel grounded in moments of despair, or when we don't feel like we're successful or not moving along at the pace that we want to. We need to have somebody in our corner who's kind of a cheerleader. We talk about drill sergeants. These are the people who are going to help you get over yourself when you're kind of paralyzed by fear. They have no patience for excuses, but are nevertheless fully supportive of what you're trying to do. But they're the people who are going to hold you accountable for moving forward. And then last of all, the native is someone who knows the industry you're planning to enter and has important insider knowledge about the culture, knowledge that you wouldn't otherwise have. And so think about that. Think about them in terms of a board of directors on your career change. These are people who are really going to help you move your dreams and your vision forward. So again, your plans, you need to have a strategy. You need to kind of set that out. What am I going to do first? What am I going to do second? I think that the mind map is a great place to start. And then you have to put that down into an actual plan. What happens first? What happens second? And to really create a strategy for yourself. But help from a reinvention board is just terribly important. Because as I said, it is difficult to make all of this happen in a vacuum without the help of others. Watch out for becoming kind of the Lone Ranger who doesn't need help or who's too proud to ask for help, but rather start looking for people that can be part of this board for you, and reach out to them and ask them if they'd be willing to assist you and to have conversation with you from time to time about the direction that you're going and what you need from them. And ponder, what opportunities can I create to pay it forward? You know, where can I be helpful to someone else and to give without expectation of receiving anything back? So we're going to talk a little bit more about natives because these are the people who can really give you the inside scoop on where you want to go. And so the first thing is to locate a native. So we talk about going to your network. Some of you are on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Reach out to those people that you're connected with. See if you can't find somebody who's in the occupation that you're looking at, or the career that you're looking at. And if it's a struggle to find them someplace like that within your own network, then we recommend what we call informational interviews, which are looking for people on LinkedIn or other places that may be part of somebody else's network. Or maybe they're within an organization that I think I might be interested in, and I make a connection with them and see if they're willing to spend 15, 20 minutes talking with me to really talk about the industry, to talk about the work that they do, if that's what I'm thinking about doing. So I begin by identifying somebody that is a native to the work that you want to do. Demonstrate that you're determined to become a native to them. I think people are really willing to spend time with somebody they think is serious about moving into maybe the career that they have or the industry that they work in. And oftentimes these people will go to serious lengths to help you make that happen. As you're doing that, make sure you're always showing respect for those that are willing to help you. Make it easy for them to help you. And by that, I mean, you have to be open to meeting with them or having conversation with them at a time that is helpful to them. Okay. And so as you think about looking for natives, look for people who are doing well in their target career and who enjoy what they're doing. That's really important. You want somebody who's excited about that career that you're thinking about getting into. We know that happy people are more likely to be objective because they don't have an axe to grind. People who are burned out in their positions are more likely to put a negative spin on things. And so, people with a conflicting agenda can often steer you wrong. So you really want to find those people who are excited about what they do. And I think as you reach out to your own network, and you may not have a native necessarily in your network, but to say to those folks, do you know of anybody? I'm looking at getting into this. Who would you recommend that I talk to, that I spend some time with? As much as possible, we used to say to land an in-person interview. Obviously, that's a little bit more difficult. We're all becoming a little bit more proficient at Zoom, and I think that's the way, between that and the phone, that we're going to be doing these, at least in the near future. But make sure that you are prepared with questions for this person that is really going to add to your knowledge. And you know, maybe you want to know about pay. Maybe you don't want to know about the best way to enter into that type of position. Maybe you want to know about other employers that they might know who have this type of position that you're looking for. And certainly one of the things that you always want to ask at the end of some of those conversations is, who else do you know that you think might be helpful to me in this industry? So you're building that network, and when it comes to a time when perhaps there's a position that you feel you're qualified for and you want to apply for, you may have met somebody at that organization that perhaps can ease that path a little bit. Just some basic tips, you know, use email, telephone, social media. Make sure that you are always being very respectful of people when you're talking to them, and keep your options open. Obviously, you have a plan and a way that you want to do this in a timeline. Just remember that other people also have obligations, and so sometimes you have to really work with their timelines. We know that natives can really provide invaluable information on the pros and cons of your career, but also who's hiring, who's not hiring, what kind of education do you need, what kinds of qualifications do you need, but really can also speak to culture. What's the culture of an organization? What's the culture of this industry? And to kind of give you that insider's feel, which is important. So start to set up networking meetings with people that you consider to be natives. As you identify that path that you want to go down, and you look for people who are natives, look for people you can talk to, and get passed along to other people to be of help to you. Consider the downsides of any profession. What am I willing to deal with in order to have the upsides of this new career? Because there may be some downsides, and I think you want to be honest with yourself, realistic about what it's going to take to get there. So think about that as well. Anticipate struggles and really plan for them, you know. Sometimes that's planning for them financially, sometimes that's planning for them in other ways. One thing to be mindful of is we all have a timeline in our head of how long this is going to take. And I'm just going to tell you, it takes the time that it takes. Remember, again, I'll repeat this again, it is a journey, it is not a day trip. And so while we all want to be in control of this moving to a different position, there are things that we can control, there are things we can't control. Sometimes we have the illusion that when we call someone, they'll get back to us right away. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we have a timeline in mind as to when we want to meet with people. That doesn't always happen. There are life events that happen. There are world events that happen. Certainly, COVID has changed kind of world events in many ways. And so we might have had a plan for how we were going to do this reinvention, and now we find that we need to be thinking about doing it other ways because of what's happened. We also really can't control when opportunity arrives. You know, sometimes we have a plan set out, and there will be an opportunity that maybe pops up in the middle of that. That's just something we hadn't thought about, something we hadn't planned for, and yet it arrives and it's something we want to take part in. So think about, how am I going to change my expectations? Really make a list of the things you can control. Keep a plan B on the back burner, knowing that as you go through this journey of changing your career, you have to just be mindful of the fact that it's going to take the road it takes. And while you can put as many things in place to make it go your way, at times there are just things that you're going to learn, people you're going to meet, opportunities that pop up, maybe things you hadn't planned for, that are all going to require you to refocus the journey, refocus the strategy. So you need to make kind of a tactical plan of how we're going to go about doing this. Develop a plan to accomplish your goal. Anticipate struggles, plan for them as well as you can. Write down the tasks, the things that need to happen. Make sure they're in small bites, that they're manageable. That's a way that as you accomplish those, you can feel like you're making progress, you're moving forward. If we make them too big, sometimes that just can be self-defeating for us. So make those tasks manageable. Keep a routine of kind of doing those manageable tasks. In other words, it's not about doing some of it tomorrow and then not doing anything for a month. You really need to set up a plan that gets you on a path that keeps you going. If at all possible, you know, make them fun, make some of them optional, but momentum is important. And so build in rewards as you go along, formal accountability as well as kind of a tracking system. And so those things will help you to keep moving forward. If I know that if I do these 5 things by the end of the week, I'm gonna, you know, treat myself to whatever, maybe it's a walk, maybe it's something more than that. That's great. If I have some people on my Reinvention board who can hold me accountable in a more formal way, that's helpful. And then just to have a tracking system so I can go back and take a look at that and say, wow, look what I've accomplished. Look how far I've gotten. I maybe have a ways to go, but I have accomplished something already. And then try and do one thing that challenges you each week. We learn the most when we are challenged. And so just know that those things that kind of challenge you or that seem maybe even a little bit intimidating or frightening in the beginning, once we've conquered that, they become new skills. So you will learn a lot just by going through the journey itself. So again, the takeaway is reinvention has its own timeline. You certainly need to lay out a plan, lay out a timeline, make sure that you control the amount of effort you're putting in this to make things happen, but things will also somewhat happen on the schedule that they do happen. Sometimes things pop up that we don't see and can really just turn us around for a bit until we can get back on track. As I said before, set up a plan to reward yourself, whatever that means for you. And then think about the enjoyable activities that I can pursue while I'm on this journey. And again, that doesn't have to be things that necessarily cost money. It can be going for bike rides. We do know this, the world buys into an aura of success. Confidence comes from a belief in yourself, and the more confident you are about the path you're going down, about what it takes to get there, confidence in your skills to get there, confidence in your work ethic to get there, that will, other people will see that, okay? And so you want to know your skills and aptitudes. You want to focus on career changes that really link to transferable skills. Sometimes it means we have to do emotional work to heal. For some people during this time, the leaving of their past employment has been incredibly difficult. And for some, we know that that position or that company, that opportunity may not come back to them that way. And we have to deal with the emotional side of that, especially if we're going to go out and interview with other organizations. A positive attitude is incredibly important in an interview situation, as is confidence. Employers want to hire people who are confident. So doing the emotional work, maybe just having conversations with people that you trust about what you've been through and finding ways to kind of move beyond that. Acknowledge that you have been successful in your past. And for some of you, and it may be for most of you, you have held positions that maybe as a very young person, coming out of high school, coming out of college, you never thought you would have. And so look back on that and take a look at those positions and acknowledge the success that you had and acknowledge the skills that you've learned. Someone told me a long time ago, and I think it's really true, don't run from something, but rather run to something. And so as we look at a different career path, be intentional about where you want to go. Don't just run to something because you feel like you have to have something. And again, it may mean that you take what I talked about, a survival job to get to where you want to go. But really think about, where is it I want to run to, not I want to run away from something. So take the time to really assess your motives for career change. For many of you, there's a choice between, do I move into a different career, a whole different path, or do I go back to the kind of work that I was doing before? So for many of you, that's a choice. For others of you, the career you have simply doesn't exist, at least not in the near future. And so there again, you want to be intentional about where do you want to move to, because at the end of the day, you want to find a place where you feel like you belong. You feel like you fit into the culture, you feel like you have the skills, you feel like you have the ability to learn what you don't know. And we always have to learn something when we move to our next position, even if we're moving to the same kind of job. So just really take a look at where you've been successful in the past. And then surround yourself with people who believe in you. Whether that's family, whether that's friends, again, as you start to build this network of people, and think about that network of people who are going to be who are going to walk this path with you as you look at career reinvention, or maybe just moving into another career. So the takeaway on this last step is that create that inner knowing in yourself and that faith in the possibility of attaining your goals. You have to believe you can do this before others will believe you can do it. But once you have that faith in yourself and you can develop that confidence in where you're going, other people are drawn to that. Remind yourself of challenges in the past that you've overcome. For many of you, you have taken on positions that maybe you felt you had some of the skills, and then you get into a position, you go, wow, I don't maybe have all of them, but you've taken on the challenge of obtaining those skills. And so give yourself credit for that, that we all have learned a lot as we've progressed from one position to another. And then ponder, how determined am I to succeed? Because that kind of motivation, that determination is what's going to take you where you want to go. So it's now time to reinvent yourself. Let me just tell you about a couple of free training opportunities quickly before I go to questions. 80 Works, which is Arapahoe Douglas Works, it's the workforce center for those two counties, offers a number of free 2-hour virtual workshops that anyone can take advantage of, and I would encourage you. But one of the ones that I think is particularly helpful to people is on emotional intelligence. And in that, this is a skill set that's used in many positions, and I kind of threw out earlier, jobs like contact tracing. This kind of thing is very important. And I think if you can talk about your skills, we see a lot of people in the hospitality industry who have great emotional intelligence skills because they're used to reading situations, and they're used to reading other people and determining how to serve them best. So just know that we have some workshops on that are scheduled on Tuesdays and Fridays. And you can find that information on our website at www.adworks.org. You don't need to register. You simply need to go on to the calendar link, which is on the lower left-hand corner on the front page. And you will see not only the calendar, but the times of all of the courses that we offer, including emotional intelligence. I will just tell you, I found another resource for people that I happened upon by sheer coincidence that I think is interesting. For those who have an interest in contact tracing, we know that there have been some of those positions in the past, maybe some in the future. Purdue University has a part of their program called Purdue Global, and they actually offer a free online contact tracing course. I think it takes about 8 hours, and you get a certificate at the end of that. But that's the kind of research you want to do about certification programs or just training that you can get, much of which is free. We know that LinkedIn Learning also has a large amount of free training as well. And there are other resources. I would encourage you to reach out to your local library. Many of our libraries have a career advisor working for them. I know Arapahoe County certainly does. So that is the conclusion of what I wanted to share with you today. So I am going to go back to, let's see here. I'm going to go back and answer questions. So, all right, hold on here. Okay, now I'm going to do this the right way. There we go. Okay.
This is Allie from Congressman Crow's office. I just want to remind everyone to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll make sure they get answered.
So Allie, I am just struggling to get back to where I was. This is kind of crazy.
Yeah, Beth, if you look, either there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or I put stuff into the chat box for you as well. Either one works.
Okay, let me see if I can pull that up here. Here we go. We'll start with Q&A. Okay. So someone says, I was in industry for 15 years. And I went from entry level to manager. Now I have to change industries. But I know my experience is just as good as a degree in other industries when it comes to crew management. But all of the jobs want a degree, not experience. And that's a struggle. We're seeing more and more organizations that are recognizing the importance of experience over degrees. It may mean that you need to get some kind of certification to move into some of those positions. You may not have to get a degree. I'll tell you the other way around this, though, is to start networking and really networking with all kinds of people in the arena that you want to go into, and really talk with them about how do I get in without a degree, you know. And getting to know people, because many people are hired that way regardless of the qualifications that appear on a job description. So let's see, other one. So the chat here, okay. Allie, I am seeing that one. Let's see. I'm only seeing one.
I'm working on getting some more for you. Hold on just a minute, Beth.
Okay, I have someone here who said, I'm done working in hospitality after coronavirus. How do I get an office job? I talk to people all day long who say that exact same statement. And I think you start by taking a look at what are your transferable skills. If you've worked in hospitality, you do have skills in customer service in all likelihood. You may have skills in conflict resolution. You may have communication skills. So it's about starting to identify all of those. And then it's about writing a resume that really highlights the skills that you have and a little less where you got them. We call that a functional resume. And I would encourage you to get a hold of your local workforce center and just ask for an appointment for someone to have a conversation with you about writing a functional resume to help you move out of hospitality and into office work. Again, it may require you to increase your skills. If you don't, at this point, have really good skills, and let's just say Microsoft Office would be a starting place to figure out how am I going to get those skills. The workforce centers also have access to some really great online tutorials that they can get you hooked up with to do that too. Let's see. I have a job right now, but I want to change careers. Is it bad to try something new when so many people are unemployed? No, it's not. In fact, it's a great time. I mean, you know, I think it has a lot to do with, first of all, your motivation and how much do you want to change careers. It is work to do that, but I think looking at what's out there, what's available. There are industries that are hiring, that are doing okay at this point in time. And so if you're looking at some of those kinds of careers, it's a great thing if you're going to change careers. I think it's about networking, though. It's about getting out and talking to people who are employed in that industry to find out more about how do I get into it. Can you talk about the cost of reinventing careers? It's expensive. Yes and no. I mean, it really depends. I'll just use the example of somebody earlier who said, I want to move from hospitality into office work. I can tell you, we have most of the training that you're going to need to do that at the Workforce Center, and it's free to you. If you were looking for moving into some of the tech careers through our WIOA program, we have paid for any number of people to get some basic certifications to move into some of those careers. So can it be expensive? Yes, it can, but it doesn't have to be, depending upon what you're looking for, and who you can connect with, and where are the resources to help you along the way. And this is where I will just tell you that the more you spend some time figuring out about where you want to go, what do you need, and then you start networking with people to figure out, how do I get that? Because I think you'd be surprised at some of the resources that are available. Do I have advice for keeping yourself stable, especially financially, doing this ambiguity? I think that's a tough one. I mean, it really is. And this is where I talk about that sometimes as we think about where we want to go, it may mean that in the interim, we have to take a position that just gets us over the hump financially, because obviously we still have bills and that kind of thing to pay. So we do see people taking positions that in all likelihood, they're not going to stay with for a very long time, but they are helping them financially at this point in time because they're paying perhaps more than unemployment's paying you. Are there any creative jobs out there anymore? Well, I happen to believe there's all kinds of them. So again, it's about doing the research. It's about talking to people. If I'm thinking about changing careers, should I tell my boss? My initial gut reaction is no. Let's flush that plan out a little bit more. Let's be on the road to getting to that point. At the point at which you are actually ready to make the move, you know, then I think that's a time when you share that with your employer. Otherwise, what you're talking about is you're in a state of doing research, learning new skills, that kind of thing. You wouldn't share it with your employer if you were necessarily learning a new hobby. I see this as kind of the same. There's a time for your employer to know, and depending upon a relationship with employer, you may see them as somebody who can help you get to that next position. If that's the case, you might want to have conversation with them earlier rather than later. But for the most part, I'd be cautious about that until I'm really a ways down the road and I know exactly what I'm going to do and when I'm going to make that move. So other questions right now, I don't see any more.
I think that was the last question.
The last one? Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you all for spending some time with us this afternoon, and hopefully you have had some ideas kind of percolate in your head, some thoughts on ways that you can think about reinventing your career. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you.